and it's available only in the function where it is created. Out of the function, the variable is no more accessible. So this is called scope. Here is a definition written on our documentation where it tells a variable is only available from inside the region it is created. This is called a scope. So we will see how scope work and how variables are scoped under specific function. If you create it inside a function, it will be only accessible throughout the function. Out of the function, it is not able to access. So local scope, a variable created inside a function, belongs to a local scope of the function and can only be used inside the function. So here is an example where we can see that a variable created inside a function is available inside the function. If we run this out, then you will see, and we will try out to teach you how this actually works, so we can understand and how to make this usable and use in our functions. So you can see if we print out this, it's printing 300. But what if I print this? Means now I am printing this out of the function. Our function is limited to here, and out of this the function declaration variables doesn't work. The variable which is called out of the function is no more accessible. So if I remove this to remove the calling of the function, instead if we have the function, still it is not going to work, because this x is no more accessible in our this out of the function. So the above one is running because it's correct, it is in the scope and it is printing the stuff. If we remove this out, then you will see the only the error. It is just because it is under the scope. So we can do it in different ways to make out of the scope. Means we can use it as, in any function we want and still it work. It can be work in a function, out of the function, no matter where do you have. So if we put it out of the function, then it will actually work. I don't see, we should have to, okay, we have to call the function also. So we can see that it is also working in our function and out of the function in both time. So if we run this, then we will be having two outputs of 300. You can see that. But what if you have created your function in different file and you doesn't know, or you have a long code base which contain 12,000 line of code and you don't have to go to top to write the variables which can be accessed in multiple functions. Instead, you can do something else. Means if you are not able to do that kind of stuff, how you are going to make it fully function in your different in your function and out of the function, how it is going to be work. So for resolving this, we have a method called global. So what you can do, if we put here global and put x, now it is accessible and it is no more just in scope of the function, it is also able to call from other functions also. If we, this is print function, so this is also function, so you have to know that. So we are calling a print function which is getting the value of x. However, it is inside the function, it is due to the global x which makes it global variable. So you can access your variable throughout your code base and it will not show any error. So this is how scope works. The function inside the function. Uh, as explained in the example above, the variable x is not available outside the function, but it is available for inner functions. Inner functions, yeah. So the local variable can be accessed from the inner within the function. So it is a common stuff, and as we have discussed the global stuff we have to know about this. So if you don't declare anything as a global and you still want to uh, get access of your function, then you can do one thing. This is our function, actual function, and we are creating another function inside a function. So we have a my function of parent function. Inside we have another function which name is my inner function. So we are just calling the inner function inside our this function, and we are calling this out of our whole function. So hopefully you understand how it is going to work. To execute any our function, we have to call it. So I am calling this function inside this function, and we have the function inner function inside this function also. So when we call this thing, it will execute everything which is here. And if we are calling some function, it will also execute that. So if we run this, then you can see X is accessible inside this function. So the scope is only limited to the outermost function, means whatever you have inside your function, the variable you have created already only accessible for those. If you want to access the stuff out of the box, then it will not have that much capacity or that much ability to access your function. So if I run this out, then you will see an error. First time it will run, second time it will show an error. The first time runs, it is just because this function which is totally acceptable and this variable is inside the function, so it is executing everything without any issue. But in this case, you will see an error just because we are not able to access the stuff. So just put here global, which will make this a global variable. And if we run this, then we will be getting two outputs which will run without any issue. So yeah, this way you can have access to your function out of the scope. So global variable, we already have discussed how it works. So let's dive into it and learn how it's actually working. So a variable created inside in the main body of the Python code is a global variable and belong to the global scope. Global variables are available from within any scope, global and local. For example, we have already done this kind of stuff in our code base here to make you understandable. But for here, the W3 school also give us an example where you can see that we have a variable here. If we call this in our function, it will still work. Out of the function, it's also going to work. But if we have the function inside our the function, here is another example. So okay, so we have x here and x here also. So our outermost variable contain 200 and our this function contain 300. So the inner function output will be 300, and this variable which is out of the function which is calling here will have 200 value. So it is a big scenario where we have to use global, because I want to have the this x value to be global for every value. If I have any value similar to in our code base, but I want to use this value as a global, then I have to use it as global. So if I do this, then every value will be replaced with 300. So it will exactly, if we have something like 300 in our code base, and if we make this global, then every function, every variable in our code base, no matter it is inside, so you can see that only it's work when we put it inside the function, the global variable, it's only work there. But putting global out of the function will not make the variable inside a function similar to what we are declaring. So try out by yourself and try to understand how is it working. But yeah, it is a real use case. Still, I'm little confused, but hopefully you understand. It's just will be clarified after using some kind of programs. So global keyword. If you need to create a global variable but are stuck in the local scope, you can use a global keyword. So we have done this. It makes our variable accessible throughout any other function or out of the function also. So to change the value of the global variable inside a function, refer to the variable by using the keyword. We already have done this. So non-local keyword. Non-local keyword, what is that? If you use the non-local keyword, the variable will be belong to the outer function. What is that mean? So if we run this to understand non-local variable, I think it is totally different from global variable. So if we run this, we can see that we have a function, and inside a function we are declaring a variable x is equal to jan. But we have in our other function which has a non-local x variable which is containing a value of hello. So when we going to print and we will executing the stuff by returning x, it's actually printing hello. However, it should print this jan. It is just because the non-local stuff. So what it does when we put non-local, it make a execute for out of the scope also. So it's making this not just a local, but you can execute from anywhere out of the function also. If we try to run this and try to have the variable here, however, it is returning by something, but what if we run this? So it is not able to, because this function is returning the value of x. The value of x is here is jan, but due to non-local keyword, it's making this x value global than this one, and it is overridden by this value. So when you put non-local, it's mean it is replacing some value out of the scope. So LEGB, something similar. I think you understand. If you know, you know. Python follows the LEGB rule when looking up variables name and search for them in this order. They look for local variable inside the current function, enclosing inside enclosing function, global at the top level of the module. The last it will go for built-in functions. Is there any function has been used or any variable has been used which is built in the code base? So here is another example. You can try out it by yourself. I think it is not important for now. It is little making confusing. So let's skip this for now. But hopefully you will try out it by yourself. Exercise. Consider the code. So we have x is equal to 300. If we have created a function which contain x is equal to 200. If we run this print x, we know that if we doesn't call any global keyword, then it is inside the scope. So out of the scope it will execute this value. So we having this 300 as a answer. If we run this, we are correct. What's happened right now? Let's go for our answer should be correct. Submit if we are okay. So let's move towards next topic.